Hello and welcome to everyone. We're getting people that are coming on board. That's great. Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We'll just give it a couple more seconds. Just people are coming in. Just having a look at the list there. Okay, I think we're good to start our webinar this afternoon. Welcome again. My name is Liz Carter, and I am the Service Operations Manager here at Charity Digital. And I'm your host throughout the webinar today, and another lovely warm welcome to everyone. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. It'd be really good to know where you're joining us from, your name, your organization. And our session today is entitled Turning Digital Storytelling into Real World Support, and will be led by Megan Waters, the Director of Community Engagement and Marketing at Public Interest Registry, PIR. And Megan is joined by Lauren Dillon, Director of Marketing at Name.com, and also Nick Goldsmith, Founder and Director at the Bank of Dreams and Nightmares. First of all, before we actually move on, I'm just going to do a very quick intro to Charity Digital for those that don't know us very well. We are a registered UK charity, and our mission is to help other charities increase their impact by being more digital. And I just wanted to share a few house rules as well, a few pointers for today's session. It is being recorded, and we will be uploading this so you can watch on demand, probably within a week's time. Any slides that will be shared today by Megan, and any resources will be made available to you. So don't worry, we'll be sending them to you afterwards. You won't be missing anything. Now, closed captions are also available for today's webinar. And to enable these, just down at the bottom of your Zoom window, click on the up arrow button next to caption and show subtitles. Please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A section, which is located in the Zoom menu bar, and we will be addressing these questions at the end of the presentation. And if you do see a question there that you like and it resonates with you, just give it an up vote by just clicking on the thumbs up, and it will move up automatically to the top. And finally, if we do have any sound issues, I have my colleague Raquel in the back, and she will sort us out. And so I'm going to ask Nick and Lauren and Megan if you could please turn your cameras on. And
Yeah.
welcome to the three of you. It's lovely to have you here. And Megan, I'm going to hand over to you, and I will turn my camera off.
Yes, thank you so much, Liz. And we don't have a ton of slides today because we really are going to dig into some great conversation on what it means to turn digital storytelling into real world support. And like Liz mentioned, I am from Public Interest Registry. We are the digital home of the .org community. And with over close to 12 million domains registered worldwide, we really support those that want to be online and make an impact across the globe. In doing that, we have a lot of different partners, Charity Digital being one of them. But we have some other ones that we work with to ensure that the .org is safe and secure so that if you are a nonprofit using it for impact, you don't have to worry about the presence being stable for you to tell your story online. That's why we're so thrilled to actually have Lauren Dillon, one of our partners from Name.com, join us. In a moment, she'll introduce a little bit about herself and her organization, along with Nick, who is one of our .org community members. With the Bank of Dreams and Nightmares, he is a .org that really supports storytelling online for the youth, located in the UK, but is also going to be looking to expand globally and sharing a creative force for making an impact in students' lives. So I'm going to pull down my slides so you can really get to know our speakers before we dive into today's conversation. So Lauren, I'm going to hand it over to you to give a quick introduction about yourself and Name.com.
Yeah, that sounds great. So excited to be here. So excited to be a part of this conversation today. I'm Lauren. I am the director of marketing at Name.com. Name.com is a US-based domain registrar. We're focused on making building simple at any scale. We would describe ourselves definitely as a customer-centric company. We actually offer one of the largest top-level domains, which is everything to the right of the dot when you think about a domain, of any registrar with over 600 TLDs. The company and I actually set out of Denver, Colorado, here in the US. And in addition to domain names, we sell web hosting, email services, security, and other website products. And we also cater to businesses by providing a simple modern API that enables developers to put domains in their own platform, which is something we've expanded into in the past year. So we're really excited. We've partnered with PIR, excited to be here with Nick as well to amplify how nonprofits can really build successful digital presences in the past year. And excited to be here today to talk a little bit about my experiences in digital storytelling, not only at name.com, but as a marketer in general. And appreciate you having me here.
Oh, thanks, Lauren. And now to the other side of the coin, someone who has a domain that he uses really vividly and amazingly. I'm going to pass it over to Nick to give a quick introduction of himself and the Bank of Dreams and Nightmares.
Thanks, Megan. So, yeah, I'm Nick Goldsmith and I run the charity, the Bank of Dreams and Nightmares. We're a creative writing charity based in Dorset in the UK. And our goal is to engage and give children the extra confidence they need to believe in themselves. And we do that through creative writing. So it's all child-led. We let the children's imaginations run things and go wild. And the impact we've seen is children who may have been out of education going back into a higher education after working with us. We've had children who have neurodiverse issues, and they've gone from doing workshops with her where they would not even read out loud, going on to performing in front of an audience. And we even, I'm most proud of, have our first actual trustee on our board who was formerly a participant with the charity. So everything we do is about storytelling. We're a real bank, but we're a bank for stories. So if you deposit your story with us, or a child deposits their story with us, we'll help it gain interest by sharing it with the world. And the digital presence side of it is a big part of that. And I'll talk about that more later on. I have to say, this is my first webinar. So I'm very excited to be on it. I can also talk a little bit about how being online got me onto this webinar. Thanks, Megan, for having us. But yes, that's the Bank of Dreams and Nightmares.
I love that you are so used to sharing stories online in different ways and in person, and this is the first time you are bringing your story in this type of format. So thank you. Again, you kind of even just touched on this with your stories, but we know that stories are so important, and every nonprofit has a story. And so we're going to kind of explore today how charities can use their website, their digital presence, and emerging tools to better connect with supporters and share their story to drive that real world impact. And we want to think again, especially in this day and age, like, why does it matter? Why does this digital presence matter so much? So, Nick, I'm going to go back to you, and can you tell us a little bit more about like how you use your digital channels to communicate your mission and connect with supporters? And I know that they dropped in your website actually in the chat box. So if you guys have an opportunity to pull that up while Nick's kind of talking through this, it would be wonderful because you all have such a presence.
Thanks. I do our website, so I'm a big fan of our website, and we put a lot of work into it because we want people to know what we do and see what we do. So part of that is we work with local filmmakers, so we'll make a lot of films that celebrate what we do and hopefully translate visually in storytelling the process that the young people go through when they work with us. So the website is key. I mean, we use the website to engage with. So we work with in schools, and we have after school clubs, and we do other events as well. And so a big part of what we do is how do we recruit young people to come and work with us, and the website is one element of that. And so a school can log onto the website and they can book workshops directly through the website, because what we try and do is we have to minimize the effort it takes for someone to be able to work with us as a charity. because it's too easy for people to not sign up. So again, everything we try and do is how can we simplify the process. It's same goes for donations, same goes for recruiting volunteers. We're always trying to work out how can we make it simpler so we don't lose them. But it's really weird. So I'm sure a lot of charities have a similar problem. We are our remit is to work with those children who are harder to reach, those children who might not normally get the opportunities to work with charities like us. And they're harder to reach for for many reasons. But one of the things is they're not easy to recruit. The kids we really want to work with are not going to click something on a website and sign up. We have to get out there and be in the community and actually meet these people and work with these people in order to recruit those harder to reach children and have the biggest impact that we can. So again, I think the theme for me, I was talking a bit earlier about this, is it's a combination of, for us as a charity, it's a combination of having a very strong digital presence, which is clear and easy to use, but then being out there in the community, making direct personal relationships. Because when it comes to it, those personal relationships are what matter. And then we can use the online presence just to keep that all up to date. Have I answered that?
Yeah. No, I think you pointed out like two really important things. So one, it's that connection of like it can never be one thing. So you do have to be making these like critical relationships in person, especially with a lot of the directed impact or the missions that nonprofits have, where like that is the bulk of the work you're doing is this like community presence, community building. But in order to continue like that support or have that legitimacy, once you started to either form these connections or when you're looking for more support when it's coming from like donors or funders or growing your program, you have to have that like digital presence and legitimacy to back your mission up. Because that online presence, and then once they're online, it has to have an easy channel of what the next steps are. And so, like, you kind of hit on a couple of key things. And I'm interested, Lauren, from your perspective, because I think that nonprofits sometimes overlook that digital presence where they might. You can get really lost in this in-person part because it's so mission critical. Um, but then some of this like digital presence goes on the wayside. And so I'd love to hear, Lauren, since you work with so many different organizations that build their digital presence, like what are some biggest opportunities nonprofits miss in kind of having that second really key component as part of their work?
Yeah, and I think what you just alluded to as well, Megan, like it ladders right up into my response as well. We know, based on your experience, even Nick, that like discoverability is key to a success of a nonprofit, not only for the people you want to service, but also the people you need to support your organization and keep your organization moving forward. But equally as important to discoverability, in my opinion, would be credibility, right? Like you need someone to hit your website and you need to have them trust you as a nonprofit and want to be engaged. And for us, I would say like, being in the domain industry, working with Megan, a lot of like digital presence starts at square zero in our perspective with a domain. A domain, you can think about it like from a digital perspective as you have a house and the foundation of that house, your digital house, is the domain, and you build everything on top. And then what that gives you is a consistent, like trusted resource and a trusted location, your little slice of the internet. I call it your like internet real estate, right? That is like it's yours. And then you have the opportunity to like tell your story from that own space and build with tools such as website builders, to your point, Nick, something you guys have invested in heavily on top of it. And I think like choosing a domain might feel intimidating, but it's really there's like three keys that we always preach, right? One is that there's you keep it short, you keep it simple, and you keep it memorable. You can keep it descriptive in the way that like Nick, you've done with your organization, which is just to capture the name of the organization. And specifically for nonprofits, I think it's important like that short simplicity as best you can do that is the best way in. The other thing that we talk about, like in that vein, is the idea of like a radio test. If you say it out loud, essentially, or you want to advertise or push your nonprofit's mission, will people be able to recall and speak back your domain to you? And I think that's another way to like gauge, is this the right domain to me? And then thirdly, I think, one of the reasons we've loved working with PIR is like you want to choose a mission-driven TLD. There's all these mission-driven TLDs such as .org, .foundation, and .charity. And this is a nice signal in terms of credibility and trust that you are a mission-driven organization before someone has even hit your digital presence online. And I think that's probably the best place for people to start. And then you can build things such as websites on top of it.
Mhm.
But I think like the website piece of it too, if I add a little color there from my end, Megan, I mean, one of the friction points I think is like not nonprofits. You are busy. You are dealing with donors. You are typically under-resourced. You are working on donation funds, right? And I'm happy to say that I think the barriers to standing up a website, in my opinion, are so much lower than they were like a year or like 10 years ago, if not even a year ago. And some of the tools like you all might be more familiar with, but we offer through name.com essentially partnerships with like what you see is what you get builders is what we call that. So think of that as like your Squarespaces or your Wix, where you have these templates. You can create an account and you do templated essentially. You can pick a template for your website and you can stand it up, plug in your information pretty easy. In order to maintain those, you do have to essentially have subscriptions to the website editors, and those sometimes are costly. So sometimes people choose to go a different path and they do essentially WordPress. WordPress is something that powers basically a hosting platform that powers 43% of websites online. Um, it's more flexible than the drag and drop editors, and it is available through hosting providers. We provide it to our customers, but it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of what you want to customize and what you want to build. The last area that like I geek out about and I'm super excited about is some of the AI tools now available to build your website. And I know we'll talk a little bit more in depth about those later, Megan, but there's a lot of new AI powered building tools that help you build websites from basically a conversational interaction. And that's really exciting. But Nick, man, you really hit it when you were like, when you build a website, you consider like the 5 second rule. You want someone to come and you want to make it as easy as possible. Like, what do you do? Why does it matter? And how do I help you? Right? Like that, if you can't answer those, what's the
Yeah.
point of a website?
Well, I was just going to jump in there quickly, and I know, sorry, Megan, we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff after, but there's, so I do a drag and drop website,
Yes.
and I try and make our website tell a story and not be the same every time someone comes back to it. Because once people have seen a website once and they come back and it's exactly the same, they might not want to stay on your website and get to the bit of information that you need. So it takes a bit more work to try and make it not different every time someone comes on, but at least take someone on a different journey every now and again. And the reason why that I think is so, and also the other point of that is to try and make your website part of your work as a charity. So it's not an addition. So we put up stories that children have written with us in the library of our website so people can see the stories and they can read the story and the kids themselves can see the stories. So we're trying to make our website not an add-on for the charity, but part of what we do. So we have to do it. So it does get updated. And the reason why that's so important now more than ever, following on for you said, Lauren, is it is very easy to make a website now. And there are lots of websites out there. And this is the whole brilliance, but also the problem with the digital presence is noise. There is so much noise out there. How do you, with your digital presence, stand out against that noise? because there is it's a bit like, I'm showing my age, but now with streaming services on TV, you can watch anything anytime. And what if you're like me, what you end up doing is just scrolling through and not watching anything because you can't make a choice because there's too much choice.
Mhm.
And that's part of
Yeah.
the problem with where things are going, is there's too much choice. So you have to think, how can I be different? How can I stand out? What is the thing that would make someone just stop and spend that extra second looking at your thing rather than someone else's?
I could not agree more. I think AI has expanded our internet more rapidly than we've seen in years in the past 6 to 9 months. The fact that the barriers to building have fallen, we just did this whole report on it internally. And actually, we found a stat, interestingly, because we obviously look at like the power of domains in this, but that like the people surveyed, 77% essentially said they expect the importance of a good domain to increase because things get more crowded. If people build more, and it gets harder to find you. Like, and I think from my perspective, you start with that foundation, and by investing in that foundation, you can at least put an instant flag in the ground on trust and credibility, especially using like a mission driven, essentially TLD, to start your journey in a place where, to your point, Nick, when you're going through the noise, you're like, oh, that's a credible organization. They have invested in a .org, or they've invested in a foundation, and they've taken the time to like select and be selective about that. And I think the other thing is like short, memorable domains in terms of discoverability. We've all heard about like search engine optimization. They're equally as powerful, and like, yeah, we call it, answer engine optimization, but that's essentially like how AI large learning models index your essentially nonprofit. So if I'm an individual and I said, I want to get back to a charity that does creative work with children, if you already have established your presence, Nick, on a domain as you have, there's a higher likelihood you're going to pull through in results there versus not having a centralized platform to essentially distribute your content.
And I'm curious because again, like this care that Nick has kind of pointed out, and even Lauren, you're like, okay, if someone then finds you and comes to your site, they're still like, they typically what you spend like 3 seconds on a website and pretty quickly are going to decide whether you're going to stay and explore more or you're going to move on to the next thing that might be on your mind. Or if you have a couple of different search options coming up, you'll click the next link because like that one was not of interest. I'm curious, Nick, how you have selected like some of the stories that you've like put on your website, or also like kind of share with your like donors outside, like once you've captured their attention, because like such a part of your work is this story element. Like what have you seen be successful, or any like examples that you could kind of share there?
Yeah. So I mean, I think for us, we find telling our story via film as for digital online presence is the most powerful. Um, we do have an after school club where the kids make a podcast, and we do have it out on SoundCloud, but we haven't pushed it yet. So we are going to push it, because all that's the other big thing with all of these things. If you put something online, it doesn't just suddenly go viral. Um, you have to work really hard at it, and I think that goes across for most of the digital stuff. Like we did a big crowdfunder campaign last year. We've done two. They've been great, but you know, if you post a crowdfunder online and don't do anything, you won't raise any money. I work on the system when I'm doing online fundraising of, I start with people I actually know and are in my address book. And even those people will take at least 3 or 4 asks before they donate. And that might be my father. So, it's like it's not easy. It's really, really tough and takes a lot of work. So yes, so for us, making films is a great thing that we do. The podcasts are definitely easier, and we're going to push that, because we like the idea of having hopefully something entertaining that people can want to listen to rather than need to listen to. So again, that comes back to the thing of making the website not an addition, or making our online presence not an addition, trying to come up with ways to make it part of what we do. So, like you mentioned at the beginning, we're trying to do, not necessarily be more global, but as a rural charity, when it comes to fundraising and trying to get people to donate, if someone's not from Dorset, a lot of people will be like, why am I going to donate to this small rural charity in Dorset? What's it, where's my connection? So, one of the things that we're hopefully going to be pursuing over the next 12 months is the idea of growing our online digital library of children's writing. So there's a website, medium.com, where people can upload publishing and read stories of things. I've got a vision, well, we've got a vision to have for the Bank of Dreams and Nightmares, because we are a bank for stories, to actually grow and become, a worldwide online library for children's writing. So children from anywhere in the world can upload a story to the bank, and any child anywhere in the world can read that story, and it becomes a depository for stories around the world. Um, you know, which will give us a bigger presence. And it just so happens that the HQ for this massive library happens to be in Dorset, and they happen to run workshops there. So if you want to help fund some of the workshops, that would be amazing. It's all just part of the knock-on effect, I think.
Mm. And again, it's that other piece of like, once you've kind of put in this time and energy to your digital presence, you are now looking at, okay, how else can we use this to connect with others? And again, have that ability to like reach donors, or even just like reach other like kids who might want to be part of something bigger, because we're living in this global time of connectivity. You're really leveraging the moment we're at now, to continue to build out that bank and excitement there.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, obviously though, like Nick, you are an expert and you are doing these things, at least in from what you've shared, in like some fabulous ways, and you've integrated it into just how you all are operating, which I think is like so smart and very strategic. But we know that some nonprofits and charities are kind of more at the beginning of thinking like, oh, we don't have that. So how do we start this? If we have never really, put in the time and energy to grow out our presence, like, where could we find more technical expertise, or how could we have other tools that would help support this? So, Lauren, I think you might have had some thoughts on this, of like how a nonprofit that might be just like, we don't have enough resources, or we want to start, but we don't know where to start. Where would you recommend?
I mean, the first thing would be buy your domain. The second thing would be about look at low stakes, in my opinion, channels for reach. And whether you like it or not, social media is one of the easier ways, I think, to distribute content and reach new audiences these days. But I think, Nick, you touched on two things, like even prior to getting into like a channel strategy, that I thought were really valuable. One is like donor recognition builds over time, and that like consistency and storytelling and fresh storytelling is really powerful. And I also feel like the other point you hit on that I really loved was, in this world of noise, authenticity carries more weight than anything else. Like having an authentic story, sharing something that is true and can't be created by AI or an AI video generator. Like the authentic storytelling is what essentially will reach attention. And you can use social media as a means essentially to distribute these stories. I think that, in some capacity, you never want to be fully reliant on social media for your nonprofit entirely. Like we all know social media platforms that have come and go. Twitter is now X. There was a platform that I used to be on a lot called Vine. Vine no longer exists for those like familiar with it. Um, but I think like there's two ways that we think about, especially even being at name.com, we're a smaller business. We're a smaller registrar in the US. We also have to be scrappy in ourselves in terms of how we compete with big US registrars and big US partners. And there's two ways we do that. One is what I would call value aligned partners. So these are like other nonprofits local businesses, community organizations, people that have overlap with the audience you want to reach, and doing collaborations on content. Um, we experienced this firsthand. We've done it with local Denver businesses, and we've done collaborations to try to get our word out. And then instead of using your singular channel for reach, you're basically bifurcating, right? And if you're both distributing the content, there's that cross kind of positive effect across both your channels. The other thing is that I think is really valuable is leaning into the niche creators. Nick, you talked about like tapping into local filmmakers earlier in this conversation, but say you are a organic farm that's, servicing food insecurity, for example. Do you partner with a UK-based organic farmer influencer or creator to generate a content to bring awareness? And a lot of times, in the same way, a local charity or a local community will be like, yes, let's collaborate. A creator also could be equally open. And I think one of the interesting things is, hopefully you can't hear my kids, guys. This is getting very real in the background. The other thing is that I think people get intimidated by the word creator. It's sometimes synonymous with influencer. They say, I can't get an influencer, mass influencer. But when we look at trends, especially amongst younger audiences, niche creators are growing in popularity, and the tall, like the tight, close-knit communities online are the places where people are most engaged. And so it shouldn't feel intimidating to say, I want to go out and go work with a creator. Sometimes it's as easy as sending a direct message on Instagram and saying, hey, we love your content. Would you like to partner? And if they're smaller, there could be a huge appetite on that end. And I think that's a really promising area for nonprofits who want to extend their reach and be discovered and get more people coming to their digital properties, is to do some lightweight partnerships.
Lauren, you just kind of touched on something that we at PIR are also thinking more about is like when we say community storytelling, actually having more of the stories come from the communities we're working with rather than, again, PIR telling the story. And I think a lot of other nonprofits who are serving maybe, different missions that they have someone who's been affected by getting access to clean water, is having that person actually share that, whether it's on a social media platform, digital presence, or in a story to a funder. And Nick, you even do that yourself as you're thinking about like a podcast or the how you're working with the students and kids that are creating these things. Like they are not influencers, and that is not the point, but they are part of the fabric of your mission and your presence, and having their voice is so critical. That is that authenticity. So I don't know, Nick, if you want to even touch on that a little bit more, since it is something that you all use.
Well, I was just going to say it's very easy for us. In a way, it's easy for us because we are a storytelling charity. Everything that we do is is not, is telling a story. It's giving children the voice and the ability to let their imaginations go wild and tell their story and imagine their world. So we have a lot of content. So unlike, some other charities, yes, they have a mission, they have a story, but they're not necessarily creating stories on a daily basis. So, I'm very lucky in the sense of when it comes to pushing stuff on social media, we did a project called Song Bank where kids wrote a cappella songs and they wrote poems to their voices. And so we've got 30 beautiful poems by primary school age children, which are very easily packaged and ready to go as small Instagram stories. So, we're very lucky in that sense, in that we have a lot of content. But again, I just can't stop myself from stressing that all of this is very hard work. It takes a lot of effort. None of this is easy. So, you can set up a website, but it takes a bit of effort. You can push your social media channels, but it will take a lot of effort. So what Lauren said, and I've made a note of that, I'm going to reach out to some uh, content creators and see if any of them want to partner with me, I think is a brilliant idea. Are there ways in which you can, as a small charity, take a little bit off your plate? Because, as a founder and a director of a charity, we have a staff of, we got two full-time staff, me being one of them, and two part-time staff. So we have to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things. But if you can make it enjoyable to yourself, it makes it a lot easier to do those things. So I don't know whether that's answered it at all, but
No, I think that it's wonderful and also kind of leads me to my next question because, we do think like if you have a staff of two or you have, a staff of one or you're someone at an organization that's larger, but you wear 17 staff hats at the same time. I think that that's where a lot of nonprofits and charities are looking and hearing about how like AI tools or AI capacities can support their work. But similar to there being so much noise online, there's so much noise on these like types of tools that we can use. Like, how do you decide what type of AI tool is right for your organization or when to incorporate it in? So Lauren, what opportunities have you been seeing for nonprofits from the AI side that could be valuable?
Yeah, it's, I don't want to discount the hard work because there is the content capture, there is the idea of like strategizing, what are we actually going to post? But I think one of the great things about AI is it has taken down the barriers to from idea to actual execution. And there's a number of AI enabled tools time period from that idea to essentially shipping it across, say, your TikTok or your Instagram or your website. And we've been experimenting with a couple internally that I've really liked at name.com. I thought I'd share. One is a tool called Jasper AI. Jasper AI is not the only one. It's a content writing tool. You have the opportunity to upload your brand voice. You can upload source materials. But what it can do for you is when we used to write a blog, for better or worse, we would essentially, hire a copywriter. We would give them a brief. They would essentially write the blog for us. Now you can use a tool like Jasper or even something like Claude, give it a brief, give it a direction in terms of tone of voice, and it can draw you up a first draft of a blog. Do you still want to put your human touch on it and read it like I don't ever believe in my work AI is a replacement for humans, but can it write that initial blog and get me that much closer to the final deliverable so I can take it the 20% over the way? Yes, like that is the model we are embracing here at like Name.com and how we've been operating our marketing department. There's also some really incredible video editing tools out there that we've experimented with. One is Descript. It's got like you can do a monthly subscription. Essentially, what Descript is you edit a transcript of a video, and the video cuts to match that transcript. So it's basically like you don't need Premiere skills, you don't need technical skills. You can basically take your transcript of your film, clip out sentences, and it will clip the film in the same spots. And so it's a much easier, more turnkey way to edit video. And that's just one tool of many that we've experimented with that's helped speed up our YouTube video production, our FAQs, our customer testimonials that we work to capture. And the final thing I'd say is that, like, I think in the nonprofit world, a lot of you are probably putting together proposals or grant proposals and you're doing presentations. And there's incredible, incredible tools now for presentation design. I mean, besides, if you're into the big LLMs, like Claude is pretty strong at giving it a template and asking it to build you a deck outline. Gemini can now do Google Slides directly in their model. Gemini is Google's LLM. And then there's, single standing tools that work outside the large LLMs. One we've experimented with is Gamma. And Gamma can put you together a proposal. You feed it an outline, it will design the whole thing. So your hours maybe is spending at your computer in the evening to say, oh, I have to put these deck slides together because tomorrow we have to go see, a large donor. We want to bring a deck on the background of our organization. Those hours could be saved. You could actually be spending the time putting the efforts back into lining up your next workshop or planning out the next event actually for the people your nonprofit is servicing. And I just think that's one of the coolest things we've experienced. I would say it can be intimidating, Megan. Like it's hard to be like, where do I start? But I think the best like advice I would give and the way we approached it is like, which workflow takes me the longest time and identify a singular workflow and start there. Like do the research, find the tool, experiment in one workflow. Don't overhaul all your workflows with AI at once. Do not recommend, but start small and build up.
It's
Yeah.
it's sorry, I was just going to say, Megan, it's interesting for us because we're a writing charity. So, I'm very
Mhm.
much it's in our constitution is that, one of the things that we are trying to do is protect children, uh, not from AI, but not rely on AI to write their stories because, if the brain is a muscle and it's a bit like, when we all use sat nav now. But so no one knows how to get anywhere because if sat nav goes off, you don't even know the route that you do every day. You probably still can't do it because you rely on sat nav. And it's a bit of the same with AI when it comes to actual writing. It's so important for children because their brains are not developed. So we have a thing where we like in all our workshops and after school clubs, there is a big thing of like we are not using AI to creatively write because we're not saying AI is bad because it's not bad. Well, I mean, some people say it's bad, but as a writing charity, it's important for us that children are using their imagination themselves, getting things wrong, and the stuff that comes out of a 9-year-old's brain, no LLM model could possibly come up with. And that's what we as a charity have to protect. So, when it comes to other areas within the charity in the background, AI can be used. I do think any AI model, whichever one you're using, is only ever going to be as good as how much input you put into it and how much information you give it and how much you question it and how much you go back on it because the first pass that it will give you, it's a bit like with writing, the first draft is never going to be the best one. It can take many, 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 many drafts before you get to a good one. And I think that's a really important thing with any AI is it's only as good as what you put into it, and you
Yeah.
need to
I
put a lot into it. And the only other just one thing that I've just noticed a lot recently with the design side of things is it's a bit, there's a thing at the moment, people are doing posters and stuff for stuff, and they all look the same. And you sort of go, oh, they've all used AI to do these posters because they're all really good, but they all look the same. They've all got the same jagged sort of lines on them and a bit sort of painty with the same sort of logos. And a kid, I got picked up on this, and I won't do it again. I can't believe I'm even saying this. I used a AI thing to design just a logo, a word, and it was to go with an article in the newspaper that the kids had written. And the kids, I showed them the mock-up, and the kids went, "That's AI." And I was like, "How do you know?
you could not, yeah. You could
How do you
not be
know?"
more right, Nick, though. Like
I was like, "How do you know?" And he's like, "That squiggle there is an AI squiggle." And I'm
well,
like, "What?"
well,
And they knew.
both AI writing and AI design have such strong telltales that it's AI writing and AI design. That's why we talk about AI slop. It's all over the internet in my industry. Like we do not want to produce AI slop, which comes back to like why it's so important to do authentic storytelling. The other thing that's just like so top of mind with me, you saying that, Nick, is we've been in a marketing offsite for 3 days now, and our team this week took a writing course with a college professor because it's like you have to go back to the basics in some capacity to be able to understand, like, yes, AI can fill that gap, but you need to know who you're speaking to, how to emotionally motivate them, like what you want to convey, what you want the person to do, especially in like marketing. And we went back to basics, and I was like, you need both sides of the coin. AI is not going to go away. It might give me that first draft, but I still need to know how to write, and I got to keep those skills polished. And so I think it's incredible, like what you're doing with kids, because I'm like, I'm so I'm actually such a proponent of like minimal AI, especially in younger childhood. But when you're running a nonprofit, time is precious, and some of these tools can speed up delivery, at least in my opinion.
But
Yeah.
maybe
And
the point is don't hide it. Like if you're going to
Yeah,
use AI, just be honest.
be
Like
honest.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm just saying this now because this is out there on the. I am not doing any other. That was one visual thing. It didn't make it into the paper because the kids picked me
we
up on
will
it.
we will note that there's no more
No, no.
AI.
But that way, it didn't make it into the paper. So the paper's never had anything in it like that. And we work with real illustrators all the time, and I love them all dearly. And I apologize to every illustrator I've ever worked with for this one tiny little. It was just a word. It was a singular word. That was it. I will never do it again.
And I do want to highlight two kind of things that just came up as you all are talking is that I think is really important for nonprofits and charities when we think about this AI topic. So, Nick, you said that you all have a policy at your organization, and it is like so mission critical and like for your team to all be on board for what AI is and isn't used at. Because also, when you're looking at these like large language models, you're putting information from your nonprofit into it. And so you have to have a policy of what information is going to be fed into these, what tools are you using, and how you're using it. And I think that, again, that's that transparency, honesty. We understand where it can help build capacity for nonprofits. But for you, your mission and your team, you have to be clear about it. You have to know where your lines are. And then you have to, again, have everything kind of on the table as we work through this, because there are going to be some tools too, because it surged so quickly that you might want to remove out of your suite if you find out more, if you find out it's not working. And there might be some other tools, even as Lauren's sharing, that you might want to investigate more and just make sure that it aligns with the work that you're doing and the information that you want to share inside these tools as well. Because no one can tell your story except for you. And so when you're, like you said, it's the information that you're feeding it. You never want to move away from what your North Star is at your charity or nonprofit, because a tool or model is going to edge you somewhere else. You have to have that at the center of your work always in order for these to be capacity building and for your digital presence to still have that authenticity along with all of the other pieces and components that are going to tell your mission and story and really connect with your donors, founders, volunteers, and those that support your work. So we are at the time where we hopefully, have Liz come back on and join us. And if you haven't put any questions in, we'd love to hear them. I have even more questions, but want to open it up to everyone who's joined us today to share with Lauren and Nick while we have them, because this is stories. There's just so much to dig into, and even like what it means for charities right now today as just different tools are available and you have like different goals for your own team.
Yep, sure. Let's go to a question. We've got a question from Reg, but before we do that, just really good, helpful takeaways. Thank you so much. Lauren, could I just ask you to put in the chat? There was a question about what AI tools you referred to.
Yeah.
So if you could just put the names in there in the chat, so people are going to have a look at it. That would be great. So let's move over. Please place your questions. Do it now because we've only got a few minutes left. Reg is asking, at my NGO, we maximize community storytelling a lot for everything we do. But recently, we've been facing consent challenges. How do we get around this or go about it?
And so, Liz, just clarifying, the consent challenges, or Reg, if we could clarify, is the consent challenges from people being part of those stories? So actually getting
I would imagine. So, would it be if you're taking photos, or would it be if you're using a video or anything like that? Yes. Rach,
So
if you want to just clarify in the chat and you're still here, that'd be great as well.
if it helps from our point of view, because we're working with children, we
Mhm.
have very strict safeguarding regulations that we adhere to. So whenever a child takes part in a workshop with us to create a publication or anything that's going to be filmed, we have a series of consents that the parent or carer of that child has to fill out. And then often there will be children who they've not been given consent to be featured on film. So We just make sure we don't feature those children in the films rather than blanking out their faces wherever possible. But yeah, we just make sure that we have all of the consents are tickable on our. It's an online form, and if they can't fill out the online form, we have paper versions as well. But it's very important that we get all the consents beforehand.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think when you said like you digitalized this consent, where like back, I'm even thinking like 5 years ago, it was still just like paper forms that were scanned up. So making the process more streamlined, being as clear as possible about where the material is going to go. Because sometimes I've seen like a lack of like a hold up or lack of consent based on like, oh, this is too broad. I don't know where it's going to be shown. And then also the other part of that, like confirmation that you can take away consent at any time. So if there is consent for a few years, something happens, that there is a way that that consent can be revoked because we know that situations change. And we always want to be aware of where any materials are, especially more sensitive information with children are online. And so it is a responsibility for you as an organization to have that structured well. But the more clarity that you can provide in those consents and the ease of signing it, and a lot of that ease in signing it is the digital and just the like where it's going, being as explicit as possible. I've seen that help move forward the process. But don't be afraid to also just pick up the phone. It's an old school way of ensuring that someone feels comfortable in that consent tracking.
Yep, absolutely. Now, Laura has actually posted a question that's related to Reg's question a little. So, the question is, like so many charities, the people we support are often not comfortable being in videos or photos because we often working with them at their most vulnerable. Do you have a way round you would suggest to work with this? And when trying to share stories, is it best to use photos, for example, Canva, which, though they can sometimes feel inauthentic, they are at least capturing an essence which is difficult to capture with graphics alone. I hope that makes sense. And also, on the back of that, I would just like to ask about whether you would ever be tempted to use AI for photos.
Was that, I'm assuming that's referring when you're saying about Canva using stock imagery
Stock
rather than,
imagery,
yeah.
that's correct.
Um, it's so tricky because a real image, a real story is always more powerful than stock. Uh, we as a charity, we tend to, if we don't have the consent because it is a vulnerable child, we would tend to go with a graphic image rather than stock imagery, just because a stock image can just you're too influenced by who that person is in the piece of stock footage. Whereas a graphic, you're not associating that with the person. So sometimes we've found a graphic can be better to tell that story. We've used just a piece of text with a colored background and a voice can often be very powerful because a voice can be you don't have to know who's saying it, but actually if you're hearing a real voice and there's nothing saying who that person is, that could be incredibly powerful. So we have done that before where we've just recorded a piece of audio and we just have a graphic over the top of it, which we found has worked very well.
And
Okay, great. And just off,
And
off the
I'm
back
sorry,
of that,
yeah, just even kind of going on this as well, because we deal with so many different nonprofits, and a lot of them, we like human trafficking, we have a lot of organizations that do that. And so they're coming up with ways to really approach it in a human first way of sharing this story and this narrative. And I think that, there are visuals that aren't of humans, that are of the places they are, the community itself, that you don't need a human consent to have the playground that they grew up on, or even a graphic illustration that they've drawn themselves. Or I'd say, like, I'll double down on Nick, is like the quotes, boldly capturing those, I think is really huge. And then I think it's also that approach of empowering them to tell their story when they feel comfortable to tell the story, where something does not need to be captured in a moment. If you're having a day where it's a drive of something, I think that you also have people who, Nick also mentioned that someone from his program is now a trustee as part of their work. If your organization's been around for a long time, you also have people who've now maybe gone through the process and that you can come and have a past story from where they're now at a more established point or more willing to be to show their face or just feel more confident in where they're at. But I think this is a really critical question because it's part of that authentic story and you don't want to lose that authenticity, but when you are working with individuals you want to respect them as much as possible. So there are some really powerful workarounds, and people who are coming across your story are going to understand more why you might not have an image or video available due to the work that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Sure, definitely. Now, in the chat, there is a quick question here that says, I've seen, I think it was Henry Smith Foundation doing an illustration residency to develop art to represent the beneficiaries. Maybe you could get clients to draw something or even local art students.
I mean, I think that's like I saw that chat and I was like, that's a beautiful idea. It's another way I think you could like get around this. It's also if you wanted to partner with a local illustrator, we were talking about niche creators and niche partnerships, like not to be self-serving, but that's another distribution channel for you, right? And you're lifting each other up in the mutual sense. You're distributing their art and they can help distribute your mission. And so I love that idea for the person who suggested it, the idea of partnerships to create authentic art around, your beneficiaries or whoever's benefiting from your resources.
Yeah, that's a lovely idea. We did have another question in the chat as well. Do you have any advice for membership organizations where a membership society for healthcare professionals? So we function differently to the more public-facing charity. We are currently focused on income generation and want to increase our membership.
Um, I have a thought here just because I think about the nature of our business and the nature of the way the businesses of domains work. It's not one-to-one with memberships, but you are thinking about the customer being a long-term customer and wanting to stay with you over a long period of time. And I think that's about like building an authentic relationship with them that you nurture consistently. And that can be through things such as email, that can be milestone celebrations. We do anniversary emails for our essentially, customers. Could you do celebrations at moments of memberships? And I think, the hook is probably I don't have much advice in terms of the hook, in terms of getting someone to sign on one time versus a membership. But I think from my perspective, the important thing with a membership is how do you nurture that membership over time and make that member feel valued and like they're making impact? And how do you use your communications to help achieve that? So recognizing the person, creating events for members, finding ways to make members feel like they are adding value.
And I'll also kind of jump on just because you are a membership and have a digital presence for your membership and want to get new members, it doesn't mean your website needs to be boring. It doesn't need to be stock gray and white. Like, think about who you are and your members. Like, if you're in healthcare, like, there's such a warmth and like connectivity of like the work that you're doing together that should still have some resonance on your website or in your social media when you're creating these invitations for, again, that community presence. But like, don't, again, the like how we were mentioning earlier, your website can also be part of your membership piece because people want to feel if they're joining something that that looks and represents a place that they want to be online.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we've
Oh,
got
I'm like,
to
we could go
dedicate
on
to this.
for so long.
We
I'm
could
like,
keep going.
and like Nick has a
Yeah.
workshop, Lauren has her children. I'm like,
We've
but
just
this
got
has
into
just been
it.
fabulous. Yes.
Yes. So thank you so much for a really insightful session. Thank you, Megan and Lauren and Nick. Thank you everyone for attending. It's been great having you on board. Just before you go, I just want to give you a heads up that we do have at Charity Digital a free online event called The Future of Marketing on the 9th of July. And I believe a link will be put in the chat. And finally, if you could share your feedback with us, that would be fantastic because, as you all know, it's so important to help us to continue to develop and improve our webinars to you all. And I just want to say a big thank you again. And hopefully we will see each other soon. If not in person, it will be on a webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Bye
for
now.
having
Thank
us.
you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.